All right, so we really need to talk about TikTok. Yeah, things are getting pretty serious and fast. Um, the Supreme Court just upheld this law, and it could mean that TikTok is gone in the U.S. by Sunday, like this weekend. No more dancing videos, no more of those viral trends, potentially.
It is a really tight deadline for ByteDance, TikTok's parent company in China, to like either sell the app or face a nationwide ban. And this isn't, just like some tech drama or something. This is intertwined with, some really serious concerns about national security and the ever-evolving relationship between the U.S. and China.
Okay, but like 170 million American users are going to lose their favorite app. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge chunk of the internet.
Yeah.
We're talking about a platform that's just become like part of everything, culture and business, even disaster response. Like, remember when everyone was using TikTok to share information during those wildfires in LA? It's everywhere.
Yeah, and that's exactly why this situation has such broad implications. The U.S. government's primary concern is data harvesting. They believe that the Chinese government could get access to data from American users through TikTok and use it for things like propaganda or even espionage.
But like, hasn't the government been pretty quiet about any hard evidence to support those claims? It all feels kind of cloak and dagger.
You've hit on a really fascinating point. The lack of any concrete public evidence has just fueled all the speculation and intensified the debate.
Hmm.
It raises questions about the balance between national security and transparency. Like, if the threat is so significant, shouldn't there be more openness about the evidence?
And then there's like the whole political circus around all this. It's
Yes.
enough to make your head spin. Let's rewind for a second. So Trump wanted to ban TikTok. Then he joined it for his campaign, and now he might be the one to save it.
Well, he certainly positioned himself as kind of a master negotiator. There's this provision in the law that gives him a 90-day extension if there's significant progress towards a sale. So Trump might just leverage that to delay a shutdown, at least temporarily.
But like, could he really just do that? Wouldn't Congress or even the court step in
Mm.
and challenge his authority? We know that the Democrats have a different plan. They're pushing for a 270-day extension. They argue that rushing a sale could cripple businesses that rely on TikTok. It just seems like a recipe for a legal showdown.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another layer of complexity, the legal battle. The Supreme Court ruling is significant, but it doesn't mean the president has unchecked power. We could see Congress push back. Legal challenges could arise, and we could potentially even see a constitutional crisis.
Okay, so we've got national security worries, political maneuvering, and a potential legal battle brewing. But let's shift gears for a minute. Let's look north to Canada. They've been grappling with TikTok too, right?
Yes, and their approach has been kind of intriguing. Last year, Canada ordered TikTok to wind down business operations after a national security review. They expressed similar concerns to the U.S. about the potential Chinese government influence and data security.
But here's the catch. Canadians can still use the app. So what gives? Why the different responses?
It is a bit of a head scratcher. Canada hasn't really provided that much detailed evidence to back up their security concerns, which raises questions about government transparency and accountability. They've essentially warned Canadians to proceed with caution, but they haven't actually blocked access to the app.
So Canadian users are in this weird limbo. They can still use TikTok, but they're facing these potential security risks. And there's this lack of clear communication from their government. It makes you wonder, what does this situation say about the challenges of balancing security and individual freedoms in the digital age?
Well, it is a fundamental tension, and it's not just about TikTok. This situation highlights a broader trend of governments struggling to navigate the, rapidly evolving digital landscape and finding that right balance between protecting national security and preserving individual rights.
Right, because if governments can restrict access to TikTok based on these concerns, what's stopping them from doing the same thing with other apps or websites in the future? It opens up a whole can of worms about online freedom and censorship.
Exactly. And we need to be having these conversations now because this is a turning point. The decisions made about TikTok could set precedents for how governments regulate the internet moving forward.
Okay, I think we need to zoom out for a minute. We've talked about the U.S. and Canada, but this isn't just a North American issue, is it? How are other countries responding to TikTok and its potential security risks?
You're right. This is definitely a global story, with each country writing its own chapter. Take India, for instance. They just outright banned TikTok back in 2020.
Wow, a complete ban. That's a pretty strong stance. What led them to take such drastic action?
It was multifaceted. They echoed the U.S. in citing national security concerns, but they also expressed anxieties about TikTok, being a platform for spreading misinformation and harmful content, especially for children.
So there's a precedent for taking some decisive action against TikTok. Is this the first domino falling? Could we see a wave of bans or restrictions on TikTok from other countries?
It's certainly possible. There's a growing trend of countries scrutinizing TikTok, especially in Europe. The European Union is currently investigating TikTok's data privacy practices, and some individual countries like the UK and France are considering their own regulations.
It's starting to feel like we're watching a global reckoning with the power of these social media companies,
Hmm.
especially those with ties to countries with differing political systems.
You've hit the nail on the head. This isn't just about one app. It's about these larger questions of data sovereignty, national security, and the growing influence of these tech giants. On the world stage,
And the potential consequences are huge. Like if countries start putting up digital barriers and fragmenting the internet, what does that mean for global communication and collaboration and cultural exchange?
it's a really critical question with no easy answers. But it's a conversation we absolutely need to have. If we're not careful, we could be sleepwalking into a future where the internet, once a symbol of global interconnectedness, becomes this fragmented and divisive force.
All right, let's pause here for a moment. I think this is a good spot to take a breath and process everything we've talked about.
Absolutely. We have covered a lot of ground, and it's important to let it sink in.
So for our listeners out there who are probably feeling a little overwhelmed right now, what's the main takeaway from all of this? What should they be thinking about as they scroll through their TikTok feeds, knowing that this whole world could be about to change?
I think the most important thing is to be aware. Understand that what you're seeing on your screen is just the tip of the iceberg. There are these complex forces at play. And your data and your privacy and your online freedoms are caught in the crosshairs.
So it's not just about funny dances and viral trends anymore.
Exactly. This is about the future of the internet, the role of technology in our lives, and the balance of power between governments and tech companies. And it's a future that's being shaped right now.
So what can we do? Like as individuals, how can we make sense of all this
Yeah.
and find our footing in this shifting digital landscape?
Knowledge is power. Start by being informed. Read those privacy policies. Understand how your data is being used. And be mindful of your digital footprint.
So don't just passively consume. Be an active participant in your online experience.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to ask questions, to demand transparency from social media companies and from governments, and to engage in these conversations.
We have voice, and we need to use it to shape the digital world we want to live in.
Absolutely. This isn't just about TikTok. It's about all of us.
Okay, so we're all a little more informed now, maybe a little more anxious, but definitely more aware of the bigger picture here. But let's get back to the immediate drama. Will TikTok actually get banned in the U.S.? What are the chances of ByteDance actually pulling off a sale in time?
Well, it's a high-stakes game of chicken right now.
Oh, what?
ByteDance has been really fiercely protective of TikTok's algorithm. That's essentially the secret sauce behind its success. And they've resisted giving it up completely, but with the deadline being Sunday, they might have to make a tough choice.
Oh, yeah. I remember when Microsoft was in the running as a potential buyer. What happened there?
Yeah, those negotiations stalled. There's been some buzz about other possible buyers. Maybe even a group of American companies could pool their resources, but so far nothing concrete has emerged. And, the uncertainty is just fueling even more anxiety. For TikTok's creators and users.
Okay, let's say hypothetically a sale does happen, whether it's a full acquisition or just a partial stake. Does that actually solve the security concerns that the U.S. government has?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Would just changing ownership address the core concerns about data potentially flowing back to China? Or is this just like a Band-Aid that doesn't really address the deeper issues?
Because if the concern is really data security, shouldn't all social media companies be held to the same standard, regardless of their country of origin? I mean, are we saying that Facebook and Instagram are any less likely to be collecting and using our data? It just feels less threatening because they're American companies.
You've hit on a crucial point. This whole TikTok saga has exposed a much bigger issue, the immense power and influence of these social media giants, and the lack of comprehensive data privacy regulations, not just in the US, but globally.
So this isn't just about TikTok. It's a wake-up call about the data we surrender. Every time we use social media, these opaque algorithms that shape our online experiences, and the potential for that information to be used against us in ways that we don't fully understand or even consent to.
Precisely. This situation is forcing us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the trade-offs we make. for convenience and entertainment in the digital age. How much are we willing to sacrifice for a like or a share or a viral video?
And what about the economic fallout? If TikTok just vanishes from the U.S., won't that deal a huge blow to the digital economy?
Absolutely. There's an entire ecosystem built around TikTok. Creators are earning money. Businesses are marketing their products.
Yeah.
And new industries have emerged to support this platform. A shutdown would have huge ripple effects across the digital landscape.
Yeah, think about all the brand partnerships
Right.
and influencer marketing campaigns and e-commerce businesses thriving on TikTok. I mean, that's a lot of revenue and a lot of jobs potentially at stake.
And it goes beyond just the financial impact. TikTok has become a cultural phenomenon, a space for connection and creativity, even for social movements. Losing that would be a significant blow to free expression and online community building.
It's almost like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You know it's coming, but you can't look away. But let's not forget about the human element here. Behind all the geopolitical maneuvering and economic implications, there are real people whose lives and livelihoods are being impacted.
That's right. It's easy to get caught up in the abstract discussions about national security and data privacy, but we can't lose sight of the human cost. There are millions of TikTok users who rely on the app for connection and entertainment, and even income.
It's strange, isn't it? This app,
Hmm.
which is all about lighthearted fun and entertainment, is suddenly at the center of this geopolitical storm.
It really is, and it's a stark illustration of how intertwined technology and politics and culture have become. What happens on our screens isn't just confined to the digital realm anymore. It has real-world consequences, impacting individuals and businesses and international relations.
Okay, let's shift our focus back to the global landscape. We've talked about the US and Canada, but there's a whole world out there grappling with TikTok. Are other countries taking similar measures?
Absolutely. The concerns about TikTok's data security and potential for misuse by the Chinese government aren't limited to North America. We're seeing a domino effect, with other countries starting to take action.
Yeah, we mentioned India's ban, but what are some other examples?
Well, Australia recently banned TikTok from government devices, citing security risks, and several European countries, including the UK and France and the Netherlands, are all considering similar measures.
So this really is a global phenomenon. It seems like the trust between Western governments and Chinese tech companies is eroding pretty quickly.
That's a fair assessment. This situation highlights the growing geopolitical tensions between the US and China, and how those tensions are spilling over into the tech world. TikTok has become a symbol of this larger power struggle.
Yet it's not just governments. We're seeing businesses and individuals become more wary of Chinese tech as well.
Exactly. This could lead to a decoupling of the global tech ecosystem, with separate spheres of influence emerging. Imagine a world with like a Western internet and a Chinese internet, each with its own set of apps and platforms and standards.
That sounds like something straight out of a dystopian novel. What would that mean for global communication and collaboration and innovation?
It's a really sobering thought. A fragmented internet would have profound consequences, potentially hindering the free flow of information, stifling innovation, and exacerbating geopolitical tensions.
It's almost like we're standing at a crossroads, facing a choice between an open and interconnected internet and a fractured and balkanized one.
And the decisions made about TikTok could influence the direction we take. This isn't just about one app, it's about the future of the digital world.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. We've covered the potential ban and the economic impact and the global implications, and even the philosophical questions about privacy and online freedom. But before we get too lost in the big picture, let's bring it back down to the individual level.
I think that's important. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the scale of this situation, but ultimately it comes down to individual choices and actions.
So what can our listeners do? What steps can they take to navigate this uncertain digital landscape
Yep.
and protect themselves?
Well, first and foremost, be informed, understand the risks, read privacy policies, and make conscious choices about the information you share online.
So that means being mindful of what you post
Mm.
and who you connect with and the apps that you choose to use.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to demand more from the companies that collect your data. Push for greater transparency and stronger privacy protections, and more control over your digital footprint.
It sounds like we need to be more proactive in shaping our online experiences
Yeah.
rather than just passively accepting whatever's thrown at us.
Precisely. The internet is a powerful tool, but it's also a double-edged sword. It's up to each of us to use it responsibly and to advocate for a digital world that aligns with our values.
So what can people do if they're feeling helpless or overwhelmed by all of this? Where can they turn for information and support?
Well, there are a lot of great resources available. Organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF, and the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, are dedicated to protecting digital rights and privacy. They offer information and guidance, and even legal support for individuals who are concerned about these issues.
It's good to know there are organizations out there fighting for our digital rights
Mhm.
and helping us navigate this really complex landscape. But let's be realistic. This is kind of a David and Goliath situation. Can individuals really make a difference when they're up against powerful governments and tech giants?
It might feel like a long shot, but collective action can create real change. Every voice matters. By speaking up and raising awareness and demanding accountability, we can influence policy decisions and shape the future of the internet.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves. It's about working together to create a digital world that's more equitable and transparent and accountable.
Exactly. The future of the internet isn't predetermined. It's something that we're all shaping together through our choices and our actions.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. From the immediate threat of a TikTok ban to the broader questions about data privacy and national security and the future of the internet. But I think there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to look at: the potential impact of a ban on TikTok itself.
That's a fascinating angle. If the US shuts down TikTok, it would definitely be a significant setback for the company.
Yeah, they would lose their largest market outside of China. That has to hurt.
Precisely. And it could damage their global reputation, making it harder for them to expand into other markets. But there's another side to this coin. Could a ban actually strengthen TikTok's position in China?
That's interesting. How so?
Well, if TikTok is perceived as a victim of Western censorship, it could fuel nationalist sentiment in China, rally support among Chinese users, and further solidify its dominance in the Chinese market.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. A ban could weaken TikTok globally, but paradoxically strengthen its position in China, further entrenching the division between the Western internet and the Chinese internet that we talked about earlier.
That's the irony of this situation. The very actions taken to contain TikTok's influence could inadvertently strengthen it in ways that further fragment the digital world.
Okay, my head is spinning. This is getting incredibly complex, but it highlights the importance of thinking through the unintended consequences of our actions, especially in the digital realm, where things can escalate and spiral in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. The interconnected nature of the internet means that every action has the potential to trigger a chain reaction, and we need to be aware of those ripple effects.
Okay, so before we sign off, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, that digital iron curtain. Like if countries actually start dividing up the internet based on like political stuff or, economic interests, what does that even mean for regular people like us?
Yeah, it's a scary thought, isn't it? Imagine a world where information can't flow freely, like no more cross-cultural exchange of ideas, and the global collaboration that we're all used to, all disrupted.
Yeah, we're already seeing little bits of this fragmentation. Think about the Great Firewall of China. It blocks websites and services that the government doesn't like, or even recent efforts by some countries to control online content. They say it's to fight misinformation. But it could also lead to censorship.
Right. This whole TikTok thing could make the internet even more fragmented. We could see countries making stricter rules and tech companies being forced to follow local laws. And in the end, a splintering of the digital world.
And this goes way beyond social media. Think about global commerce and scientific research and international diplomacy. If communication gets harder and collaboration is more difficult and trust between countries breaks down, the consequences could be massive.
It really makes you think, what do we want the internet to be in the 21st century? A force for global connection and understanding, or a tool for division and control?
And like, who even gets to decide? Governments, net companies. Do normal users even have a say in the future of the internet?
That is the question. We can't just sit back and watch this happen. We need to get involved. We need to fight for the internet we want. And we need to hold both governments and tech companies responsible.
So what can our listeners do? How can they make a difference?
First, stay informed. Understand the issues, what's at stake, and what could happen. Don't just read the headlines. Really dig into the details and question everything.
Yeah, don't just accept what governments or tech companies are telling us. Think for yourself. Ask questions and demand transparency.
Exactly. And don't underestimate how powerful your voice is. Talk to people. Share your views, and fight for policies that protect your rights and freedoms online.
Yeah, and support organizations that are working for a better internet, like the Electronic Frontier Foundation or Access Now. These groups are leading the fight for our rights. and pushing back against government overreach and corporate control.
And remember, this isn't just about TikTok. It's about the future of the internet, the future of how we communicate globally, and the future of our lives online.
It's about making sure the internet is a force for good, for connection and progress, not for division and control and censorship. It's a fight worth fighting.
Yeah, it is. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up for today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the crazy future of TikTok.
Yeah,
And the future of the internet itself. It's been a little scary, but also really important to talk about.
I agree. And remember, the future isn't decided yet. It's being shaped right now. And we all have a part to play.
Stay curious, everyone. Stay engaged and stay vigilant. Until next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.